Hey there, Carl with Automoblog in the Motor City, and CarMax has done a really interesting survey about what people do when they trade in their vehicle. So do they switch brands, do they switch vehicles, or do they stay loyal to the brand and the vehicle that they already have? Now, CarMax analyzed their 2020 sales data to come up with this, and the study really has 5 key takeaways. So in this video, I want to break down those 5 key takeaways and kind of explain why the findings are what they are. And if you are in the market for a new vehicle, make sure you see the links below. Those are our free vehicle search tools, and they will help you see dealer inventory in your area. Let's dive into this CarMax survey. Let's start with the first realization here, the first key point that came out of this study. At the top of the CarMax study is brand loyalty. And according to their sales data, Lexus, Mercedes-Benz, and Cadillac have the most brand loyalty in that order. Lexus, Mercedes-Benz, and Cadillac. And that isn't really all that surprising, considering how these automakers have designed their product line. And for Lexus, I'll use Toyota, and for Cadillac, I'll use General Motors. But all of these automakers have done a very good job at following a customer throughout their various stages of life. So maybe you buy a Toyota, say like a Toyota Corolla or a Toyota Camry, and then when you have a family, you move up to an SUV, maybe like the RAV4 or the Highlander, and then eventually, as you become more successful or your business expands, then you graduate up to Lexus. And it's the same with Mercedes-Benz as well. You might start with a C-Class and then eventually end up in an S-Class or an E-Class or something like that. And with Cadillac, it's the exact same thing. This is what Saturn was years ago when it started. It was an entry-level brand. It was a young person's brand. Now, if you're a loyal Toyota fan or a Mercedes-Benz fan or a loyal GM customer, there isn't really anywhere else for you to go. So if you already have a Lexus, you probably don't want to go back down. And same with Mercedes-Benz. If you're driving an S-Class or an E-Class, you don't want to do something like the CLA class, right? And, much the same for a Cadillac. Maybe you might go for a Buick, but it would be unlikely that if you had a Cadillac Escalade, going back to a Chevy Tahoe, even though the Chevy Tahoe is nice and has features like magnetic ride control, even though it's less expensive, there's still something about having that Cadillac name. So when I see this CarMax study about brand loyalty, I also think that with Lexus, there's a reliability factor. With Mercedes-Benz, there's a safety factor there as well. And with Cadillac, there's just the caddy factor. I mean, there's just the, standard of the world, one of the world's, most prominent luxury cars. There's probably some other reasons there as well why people are sticking to Lexus, Mercedes-Benz, and Cadillac here in this CarMax survey. On the opposite side in the CarMax study, we have brands that people are the least loyal to, and they include Mitsubishi, Fiat, Volkswagen, Chrysler, and Mazda. So the CarMax study says that only 4.9% of Mitsubishi buyers purchased another one upon selling or trading in their original. Ouch. So Mitsubishi, Fiat, Volkswagen, Chrysler, and Mazda, the brands with the least loyalty in the CarMax survey. To be honest, I'm only surprised at one of those, and that's Mazda. Mitsubishi, 20 years ago, the Mitsubishi Eclipse and, the Lancer Evolution and cars like that, amazing. Those were cars that everybody in my high school wanted to own. But Mitsubishi they've really come late to the party in terms of automotive. How should I say this without being mean? The Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, just not a pleasant vehicle to drive. I had the opportunity to review it. I didn't like it at all. However, the new Mitsubishi Outlander, the 2022 Mitsubishi Outlander, much better vehicle. But that is the benefit of a total redesign. Now, if Mitsubishi does more vehicles like this 2022 Outlander, and I'm sure that they have plans to redesign the Eclipse Cross, but if they can make more vehicles like the 2022 Outlander, then maybe that brand loyalty for them will improve. Fiat, I'm not surprised to see. And I'm a former Fiat owner, and I like Fiat, but I think part of the issue is that their reputation here in the United States isn't great. Their reliability ratings aren't great, and Fiat is one of those brands that you really kind of gotta be into. And then they make some cool stuff, like the Fiat 124 Spider, which is very similar to the Mazda Miata, right? It's built on the same platform. That's a really cool car. That's a driver-focused car. But then on the opposite side, you have things like the Fiat 500L. Like, what is that? Have you ever put your underwear on backwards? That's what the Fiat 500L looks like. It's a visual representation of putting your underwear on backwards. So I'm not surprised to see Fiat have very low brand loyalty here. Volkswagen, yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. I'm not a fan of the Volkswagen Tiguan. I got to be honest with you. Now, that's one of their best-selling vehicles here in North America, so go figure. I'm going to leave a link to a review that I did because this is not a popular opinion. So let me defend myself in my review. I'll leave that link below. But in 2020, I had a new Tiguan to drive. Nice press vehicle. Like visually, it looks really cool. Like it's very stylish. It was an SEL R line, so it had 20-inch wheels on it. So I don't know if that was the reason for the awful ride, but wow, was it an awful ride. And just like weird in how it handled. It had this thing where it kept lurching, especially at slow speeds. Like the transmission and the engine could never sync up. The connectivity stuff wasn't really all that intuitive, and the seats weren't comfortable. So if CarMax is saying that based on their sales data from 2020 that Volkswagen doesn't have a lot of brand loyalty, I can kind of see why. Chrysler is next on their list. There really isn't anything to write home about in the Chrysler product line. I mean, the Chrysler 300 is old. You can get it with a 5.7 Hemi, but honestly, you're probably better off to go with something like a Dodge Charger, which is a far more cool car. And then you've got the Pacifica and the Pacifica Hybrid, which I think work for a certain group of people, but I just don't see that outside of a particular group. I just don't see Chrysler being high on anybody's list. And then the last one that really surprises me in this CarMax study is Mazda. And I'm trying to scroll through here, and it doesn't say why. Just that people just don't stick with Mazda. If they have one and they trade it in, they don't tend to get another Mazda, and that's honestly surprising to me. We have had good experiences with Mazda here at Automoblog. We've reviewed a number of their vehicles over the years and really appreciate the driving dynamics of both their cars and SUVs, and the Mazda Miata is one of the greatest sports cars of all time. It's a true driver enthusiast car. But then again, not everybody is, driving a Mazda Miata. So that one I don't understand in the CarMax survey. Mitsubishi, Fiat, Volkswagen, Chrysler, yep, I can see it because they all have vehicles that they manufacture that are complete duds. Mazda, on the other hand, that one's a little odd to me. That's surprising. So along those same lines, Mitsubishi owners, Volkswagen owners, Fiat owners, where do they go next? What are they most likely to trade to? According to the CarMax survey, it's either a Ford, Nissan, or a Toyota. So let's unpack this just a little more. And I'll read from the CarMax study. It says, Volkswagen, Chrysler, and Mitsubishi owners were all similar in their preferences for their next vehicle. All three makes saw the most customers switch to Nissan and Ford. Former Fiat owners, however, were most likely to opt for a Ford or a Toyota. Now, I think with Fiat, part of the explanation there is that what you see is maybe different than what you get. And I'm a former Fiat owner, so I can kind of speak to this a little bit, but I think with Fiat, at least initially, outside looking in, you see this brand that is fun. It's stylish, it's unique, it's different. And I think that, and especially originally when Fiat first came to the US, with Jennifer Lopez, zipping around, Jenny from the block in her Fiat, right? I think that attracted a lot of people to the brand because it was fun and it was youthful. But owning and driving a Fiat is a much different experience. And it's not that it's good or it's bad, but like my 2016 Fiat 500X, for example, honestly, one of the best vehicles that I've ever owned. It was easy to park, got excellent gas mileage, and never had a single problem with it. But the ride was a little rough. Even for a small SUV, the ride was a little rough. It's built on a Jeep Renegade platform. So again, I think people see it, it's cute, it's fun, but then again, maybe the driving dynamics and the refinement isn't quite there. A lot of hard plastic inside. That's part of the Fiat styling. So that's one of those things that you either love it or you don't. So I could see a Fiat owner, getting into the vehicle, owning it for a little while and going, hey, this just isn't for me, and trading to something like a Ford or a Toyota. I would think that because those vehicles are more normal. A Fiat vehicle, again, great mode of transportation, if that's your thing, but it's not exactly a normal everyday vehicle like a Ford or a Toyota would be. So it makes sense that they would switch, and Toyota has high reliability behind them. So, I did not have a bad experience with my Fiat 500X, but again, Fiat's reliability ratings in the US are not high at all. So if somebody owns a Fiat and they've had a lot of problems with it, then it would make sense that they would switch to a brand like Ford or Toyota that has better reliability ratings. Incidentally enough, I was on the opposite side of this. So CarMax is saying that Fiat owners are most likely to go for a Ford for their next purchase. I went the other way. When I got my 2016 Fiat 500X, I actually traded in a Ford Fusion. Now for Volkswagen, Chrysler, and Mitsubishi, so they were most likely to switch to a Nissan or a Ford. And I'm kind of stumped on this. I can't really figure out why. I can kind of see a link between Chrysler and Ford because you're talking the big three there. And I could see a Ford person maybe being more willing to go to Chrysler, or a Chrysler person, maybe being more willing to go to Ford than GM. Actually, scratch that. I have no idea why this is. I have no idea at all. Perhaps there's a link between Mitsubishi and Nissan, right? Both Japanese manufacturers, so maybe the driving dynamics are the same. Maybe people feel like, hey, Mitsubishi wasn't quite for me, but, Nissan is a little better fit. And maybe for Chrysler, it's the same kind of thing. Chrysler and Ford are both, American manufacturers, so maybe they figure, hey, I'm buying something from the Detroit Big Three. Sports cars and minivans did not fare well in the CarMax survey. According to their study, buyers were most likely to trade in a sports car or a minivan. 84% of buyers for the sports car, 71% for the minivan. Now, when it comes to sports cars, it's probably very similar to the Fiat thing we were talking about. What you see is different than what you get. Sports cars, performance cars, muscle cars, they look really cool when you see them online or on a site like Automoblog, or when you see them on the showroom or out driving. But the reality of owning a car like that is that it's expensive. They take more money to gas up. They take more money for maintenance. They take more money for insurance. And if you live in a place like Detroit, like in Michigan, like we do, I mean, you've got winter 11 months out of the year, so you cannot drive it year round. Although actually, conversation for another time, people do drive their rear-wheel drive Chargers and Challengers and Mustangs and Camaros in the wintertime here in Detroit. But when it comes to sports cars, there is a limited use. It's for spring, it's for summer, it's for fall. You have to store them. They're not super practical. They're not something that you can pack the family in and go on vacation with. So I could see a sports car owner getting it and saying, okay, that's cool. I have it. I got it out of my system, but I'm going to trade to something different. And minivans, man, why don't people like minivans? I like minivans, okay? And you know what? If you want to roast me in the comments, it's totally fine. I grew up in the minivan era. My parents had a Dodge Caravan with the wood grain on the side, but it had a turbo engine. Chrysler at the time had turbo engines, so it was actually a really fast minivan. And I can remember this one time years ago. We were at a red light. My dad was driving, and my dad was a musician during the night, so he was cool during the night. But then he was a college professor during the day, so he was an outright nerd. And this was during the day when he was in his nerd phase. So he's got his like button-down shirt on and his pocket protector with his Hewlett-Packard calculator. Oh my! And so we're sitting at a stoplight where I grew up, kind of out as you're leaving town, going out on the highway. And there was probably a college age guy, in a convertible. I don't know what it was, but he was revving his engine up and everything. And there's my dad with his big glasses on, and and he's sitting there, and light turns green, and he slammed that little Dodge Caravan that we had, and we took off like a rocket, and we smoked him. And there was one more light before you got out of town, and just as luck would have it, that light ended up turning yellow and then red. But the guy in the convertible, I think, was so bent out of shape being smoked by my dorky father in our minivan that he ended up gunning it to go through the yellow light, ended up running the red light. And of course, we stopped at the red light. And I can remember my dad saying something to the effect of, "Hey, it's too late. I already smoked you." So, minivans aren't so bad, but then again, I could see somebody having a minivan and then trading to something like an SUV. You still get the space, but you have, more of the rugged 4x4 capability. The driving dynamics may be a little bit better, but no love for minivans in the CarMax study. And the fifth and final key takeaway here from the CarMax study is probably not all that surprising, and it's that SUVs reign supreme. So if somebody has an SUV, what CarMax is saying is that they're most likely willing to trade to another one. And we have been seeing the rise of SUVs. And let me just speak from my vantage point here. From when I was in middle school, the Ford Explorer. That was really when everything seemed to change. As I mentioned, I grew up in a minivan family. I actually grew up in a minivan town. Everybody had, at the time, a Dodge Caravan or a Plymouth Voyager. And it wasn't until the Ford Explorer started showing up that I really remember minivans becoming less common in my neighborhood and in my rural Iowa community. And then after that, there was vehicles like the Dodge Durango, and then the explosion of GM SUVs, and now every automaker has an SUV lineup, small, medium, and large. And I think the reason why SUVs continue to be so popular is, like we talked about with the minivan thing, the driving dynamics are better. If you are a truck person, so there's body-on-frame SUVs, so those are your big SUVs. If you're a truck person, but you need more space inside for your gear or for your family, but you still have something that you need to tow, your body-on-frame SUVs give you that truck feel, give you that truck capability, give you four-wheel drive, give you a bigger V8 engine. You have the benefits of that truck feel, but you have more interior space. Now, on the opposite side, smaller SUVs and medium-sized SUVs, they utilize what's called a unibody construction, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's all one piece for the body and the chassis. And those unibodies are constructed out of various grades of high tensile strength steel, and that does a few things. One, it helps with safety. It helps with fuel efficiency because the architecture is lighter. But then finally, it helps with the driving dynamics. So those smaller and mid-sized SUVs, they don't feel like a truck. They actually feel more like a sedan, but you're sitting up a little higher than a sedan. And many of those SUVs have the option for all-wheel drive, so you're getting good all-weather capability. So when you look at SUVs, they just kind of hit all of the high points. They're just a really good middle ground where they provide a lot of interior space, and some of the smaller ones get really good fuel economy. You've got a mixture of all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. If you need to tow a little something, they're more than capable of doing that. So I really can see SUVs continuing to be popular, as this CarMax study indicates. If you want to read through the full CarMax study, I'll leave a link below. It covers more of what we talked about here. Also, our free vehicle search tools are below. If you're looking for something new, if you're looking for something different, those search tools will help you see dealer inventory in your area. And if you're shopping for something new, they'll also help you obtain the invoice price. If you need a refresher on invoice price, I'll leave another link as well. That will take you to an article on what invoice price is, why it's important, and ultimately how to go about getting it. If you'd like to roast me in the comments for anything I've said in this video, like about minivans, go ahead. All I ask is that you hit the subscribe button first before you kick me in the shorts. Reporting in Detroit for Automoblog, I'm Carl Anthony.
Wait.